Good morning, everybody. It's for me a pleasure to be here in this conference. Cesar asked me to speak about the experience in Júcar River Basin Authority about the determination of the water body status during these last years. I have prepared a presentation describing the different determinations for rivers, for reservoirs, lakes, groundwater bodies, etc. And then the main lessons that we have learned during these years. Well, the Júcar River Basin district is located in the Mediterranean area of Spain. Has a surface of 40,000 square kilometers and a population greater than 5 million of inhabitants. And we have an important area of irrigation, approximately 350,000 hectares. The Júcar River Basin is formed by the irrigation of different river basins, some of them like Júcar with 20,000 square kilometers, and other than with smaller areas. We have identified and we have done the delineation of the continental water bodies. We have 304 surface water bodies, rivers, and 19 lakes, mainly located in the wetlands, in the coastal wetlands, and also 19 groundwater bodies. We have defined also transitional and coastal water bodies. I will refer mainly to the continental waters that is the main responsibility of my organization. Well, for doing all this work, we have followed the different legislation, regulations, etc. that we have in Spain. First, the Water Framework Directive, and then the water law, the hydrological planning regulation, or an instruction carried out for developing all the work related with water planning in Spain that was approved like a ministerial order. This instruction describes the technical aspect that must be taken into account for making the water plans, and especially for this case, for determining the water body status. Well, I will start with the rivers. The status assessment makes first ecological status and then the chemical status. For the ecological status, we have used biological indicators. Here we have used only indicators related with macrophytes and with diatoms. And physicochemical indicators, general indicators, the classical, and also specific pollutants that are the preferred substance from the Annex 2 of a royal decree that was approved in Spain in 2011. And for determine the chemical status, we have taken into consideration the substance that are reflected in the Annex 1 of this royal decree. Well, the ecological status in rivers, a combination of biological and physicochemical indicators has been carried out and the results of this combination shows that almost the 50% of the natural rivers achieve the good ecological status. But I will highlight one thing, that in the 27% of the water bodies, we don't have found water in the samplings. And we have some intermittent rivers, not permanent flow courses, and we have had problems to make the evaluation in these rivers. And the chemical status, most of the water bodies do not achieve the good chemical status because they exceed the limits of the priority substances. Finally, taking into consideration the ecological and the chemical status, and using the criteria that the status of water body is determined by the worst value of the ecological and chemical status, and we can see that we have approximately 50% of the water bodies, rivers in good status. You can see the map in the slide. Related to lakes, also the status has been done, taking into account the ecological and the chemical status in the for determining the ecological status. Biological indicators and physicochemical indicators have been used. For biological indicators, the phytoplankton indicators and other type of aquatic flora indicators. And from the physicochemical indicators and chemical status, what is shown in the future. No? According to these studies, and taking into account the status of the lakes is determined by the worst value of the ecological and the chemical status, we can see that in the future that in the table that only the 21% of the lakes are in good status. It's a feature that contrasts with the result obtained for rivers. For rivers, we have approximately the 50% of the rivers in good status, and in case of the lakes, only 20%. That's something that we have to make some reflection. No? What is happening? It's a real situation. The lakes are worse than the rivers, or it's a problem of the methodology used to assess the water body status for the case of lakes. Well, we have most of the river basins heavily modified and artificial water bodies has been defined. In this case, the procedure followed has been similar to the natural rivers. And the only change is the biological indicators. We have make a reduction of the reference conditions after make some studies, and the values was represent 60% of the values used for macrophytes in the case of natural rivers, and 80% for diatoms, the indicator of diatoms. If we take into account the ecological status and the chemical status, and we observe that only 16% of modified artificial water bodies achieve good status. And maybe the potential has been higher, but the current situation, only 60% achieve good status according to the criteria used. For the case of reservoirs here, for determining the ecological potential, only biological indicators has been used. That is something that will have to be improved in the future, including also the physicochemical indicators. And here, in the case of reservoir, most of the reservoirs that we have in the Júcar River Basin district achieve the good status. And the water bodies that do not achieve the good status is due to fail in the potential, the ecological potential and the chemical status, except in the case of the Beniarres reservoir. This is a line of the different water bodies and the results obtained for all the water bodies that I have mentioned. Now I will pass to groundwater bodies assessment. As you know, the groundwater body assessment has two parts. First, the quantitative status, and then the chemical status. The Spanish regulation on hydrological planning defines the good quantitative status as the quantitative status achieved by a groundwater body when the mean annual extraction rate in the long run does not exceed the available water resources. It's important to define what is the available water resources. Then I will come to this concept. And the European Commission has elaborated a guide entitled a Guide on Groundwater Bodies Status and Trend Evaluation, with recommendations on the quantitative groundwater bodies status. The methods that is proposed in this guide is based on 4 tests. One test of hydrological balance, another of surface water flow, other about land ecosystems and depending on groundwater, and finally a test about marine intrusion. The non-compliance of any of these tests results in that the water body would have bad quantitative status. Referring to the first of the tests that I have mentioned, the hydrological balance test, and this test assesses the extraction against the available resources, as well as the impact of those extractions. First, the test question, is there a downward trend on water level in groundwater bodies? If there is a downward trend, in that case, bad status, the water body. If there is no downward trend, in that case, we must make another question. Is the level of, or the index of exploitation of the groundwater body understood as the ratio between extractions and available resources greater than 1 or not? If it's greater than 1, the water body will not achieve the good status, no? And this is out of 19 groundwater bodies, 19 shown a downward piezometric trend, that are the groundwater bodies colored in red in the future. And I have mentioned that it's important in order to obtain the index of exploitation and the definition of the concept of available resource. And the Spanish instruction that I have mentioned previously states that available resource is obtained as the difference between the renewable resources recharged by infiltration of rainwater, irrigation return, losses in the riverbed, and transfer from other groundwater bodies, and the difference between these recharge and the environmental flows required to achieve the ecological flow objectives and to prevent the negative effects caused by the marine intrusion, the seawater intrusion. Well, in the right side of the slide, you can see the results of this index of exploitation index. As you can see in the future, we have an important number of groundwater bodies with important values of this indicator. 31 groundwater bodies has this exploitation rate equal or greater than the unit, no? Well, as a result of these two parts of the test, the downward trend and the exploitation index, and we obtained that 33 bodies are in bad quantitative status. There is an important coincidence, except in some coastal aquifers, and where there is not a clear downward trend. but we obtain values of the index of this indicator of exploitation greater than 1. This is something that must be researched in the future. Maybe the proximity to the coast, the boundary conditions. That means the level, the sea level. But in practice, we have observed that, no? That in the coastal aquifers, these two parts of the test does not fit perfectly. No? Well, related to this assessment, we observed that 55 groundwater bodies are in good status and 35 in bad status. And the aquifers in bad status are shown in this future, are mainly coastal aquifers, also the aquifers of the Vinalopó Valley, and also the aquifer of the Mancha Oriental, continental aquifer used for the groundwater extraction for the irrigation of 100,000 hectares in this area. And according to the experience of this test, we observed that with the balance test, with the hydrological balance test, we include the other tests, the ecosystem, the surface flow waters, the intrusion. Only there are two groundwater bodies that the intrusion test says that the aquifer would be in bad status. It is not be reflected in the test balance. Well, that is important and indicates that we must take into account very carefully the test, the balance, the hydrological balance test. It's important to improve or related to this test because it really includes most of the tests. And related to the chemical status, to evaluate the chemical status of groundwater body or group of groundwater bodies, we have followed the criteria established by the Royal Decree 1540 of the year 2009, related for transposing to the Spanish legislation the groundwater directive. No? And we have used the regulations compiled in ASNES 1 and the threshold values established or described in the sections MV A and V of ASNES 2 of this royal decree. The main problems that we have related to the chemical status for groundwater bodies in our basin, in the Júcar River Basin, are related to the nitrates. And we have 24 water bodies with bad chemical status, with a nitrate content greater than 50 milligrams per liter. And related to pesticides, something strange, but we don't have problems according to the application of the data that we have in our monitoring network. Out of 19 groundwater bodies, only 3 groundwater bodies would have bad status for pesticide substances. And related to the water bodies where we have defined threshold values, in 6 of the 20 groundwater bodies where the threshold values has been defined, these values have been exceeded, and we can say that the water bodies are not in good status. And according to this analysis related to nitrates, to pesticide, to the threshold values for different polluters, we have obtained that 26 groundwater bodies present bad chemical status. In many cases, in the same areas, in the same groundwater bodies that we have observed a bad quantitative status. In the case of the coastal aquifers, for instance, there is a coincidence between the results obtained for quantitative and for chemical status, and also in the aquifer of Mancha Oriental. No? But there are other where there's not coincidence, because the problems are other. Well, this is the global status for groundwater bodies. We have 35 groundwater bodies in bad status and 55 in good. Well, and in order to finish, some lessons that we have learned about this process related to the biological indicator. Only indicator related with macroinvertebrates and diatoms has been used for ecological status assessment, and in the future, reference conditions will have to be established for macrophytes and fish. Other lesson that in 26% of the river water bodies, we have not been able to determine the water body status because there is lack of water when we have gone to take samples. And we have a question, we have to reconsider the water bodies delineation or other procedure must be established for this kind of water bodies, intermittent water bodies. And although the chemical status has been assessed in a high percentage of water bodies, in many cases has been made with studies, but not with a systematical monitoring network. We have to improve the monitoring network, controlling priority substance and dangerous priority substance. Also, another interesting lesson is that in the case of the lakes, we have obtained a lot of water bodies in bad status compared with rivers. Is this difference due to the calculation methodology, or does this represent a real fact that the lakes are worse than the rivers? No? And it's important to introduce the physicochemical indicators in the assessment made for reservoirs, or it's also appropriate to improve the determination of reference conditions for heavily modified water bodies and artificial water bodies. And the last slide related to groundwater bodies, we can say that the method used to evaluate the quantitative status, as I have mentioned, used for tests, but we have observed that the available resource definition gathered in our legislation and using the hydrological balance would include the results coming from the other tests, and maybe they could be redundant. But it's important in the application of the hydrological balance test to improve the determination of the available resources, particularly related to environmental flows needed by rivers, wetlands, and associated ecosystems. And also it's important the definition of piezometers for trend evaluation. And finally, the pesticide substance, according to our studies, do not cause bad status of the groundwater bodies. But this matter must be investigated. But since preliminary studies that we did that we made in the Júcar River Basin District shows worse results, and in the same case we have some problems of pesticides that we understand that has not been well reflected according to the methodology used. And this should be the main lessons that we have learned. We must continue. We have started with all this in the last years, and I think that in all the European river basins we have been able to define a procedure to estimate the status of our water bodies. But we have to continue working in order to improve it. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention.